Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your Amac podcast, Better for America. And with us today is Adam Kincaid. Now, he's the president and executive director of the National Republican Redistricting Trust. And Adam Kincaid really knows what the stakes are in 2022. He knows our political and electoral processes and has been really pivotal to assuring that voters and good candidates have the right information at the right time to make the right decision and right action. Now, arguably, 2022 is a year that could affect the destiny of our republic, and Adam has a depth of experience in an area many Americans know very little about, and we really should know more about, especially this year. Our guest is very seasoned in areas like redistricting and served as a special projects director and Southeastern political director for the Republican National Committee. He was also the national data director, a critical post for the National Republican Congressional Committee. Reaching beyond Congress, he has also been the director of policy and research for the Republican Governors Association. It is our distinct pleasure to welcome Mr. Adam Kincaid. Adam, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Rebecca, thanks for having me.
This is a thrill, Adam. We have so many issues before us, and I really want to get to the heart of, I think, what many Americans are thinking about today. So let me start from the top. You have been in war rooms, really chart rooms, and places where big national data is collected, assessed, and really understood. Now, we are in really a vital electoral year, one that realistically could greatly affect the future of this country. And you're close to Congress, governors, and the wider process state by state. So I wonder if you could help our members better understand several things. With more than 30 House Democrats retiring this cycle, is it realistic to think that the Republicans who are centered on fiscal responsibility, national security, lower crime, border security, and family values, that they may be able to retake that chamber? And then from what you see, are we poised in 2022 to potentially retake the Senate?
So let me kind of walk through that a little bit. So the Real Clear Politics average for the generic ballot has Republicans right now up significantly. And it seems like, and for people to realize, going back a decade, that's not common. So back in 2014 and 2016, Republicans had a very small edge on the generic ballot, picked up seats in 14, barely lost any in 16. But we're looking at an electorate this fall that could be as much as a Republican plus 5 to 7 electorate on the generic ballot. That would be an earthquake in American politics. So we haven't really seen that before. And so I think when we go into this fall, you have to realize that right now, I think inflation came out at 8% as of the report this morning, 7.9% from a year ago. And that's before gas prices were started popping over the last week or so. So I think people are going to be looking at their wallets, looking at how, the dollar isn't going as far as it did even a year ago under President Trump and, Republican Congress and Senate. So I think all of those things point to a good year for Republicans, but voters have to vote, and our voters have to turn out. And if our folks turn out and vote, I think we're gonna have a very good fall, both for the Senate and for the House and for governorships across the country.
What can you tell us about the governor's races? I think our members are eager to know the odds and really what the data is suggesting.
Well, look, I think right now for the governor's races across the country, you've got a lot of primaries, a lot of open seats. There's in a good Republican year, what you end up with are a lot of candidates who see governorships as winnable in states that are bluer, maybe states that are purple. And so I think right now we're waiting through this primary season to see who comes out on top, who our nominees are. I'll defer to the Republican Governors Association to handicap all those races, but the climate by itself points to a significant number of gains for Republicans. Look, we're defending some difficult terrain. You've got Republican governors in some very blue states that are retiring and moving on. But I think there's other places, especially up in the upper Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, other places where you have Democrat governors that are on the ropes, and the potential for some pretty good Republican nominees.
Well, Adam, so much is really happening internationally, domestically, both in urban and rural areas, at the border, in our economy. So let me start with some basics from where you sit and you see the data, knowing what you know about various congressional districts and the wider political context. Do you think that the economy is going to play this huge role in 2022? Really, I mean, you just said it, rising inflation rates, struggling energy sector, government overreach during COVID. I think people are really have disgust for socialism. We're hearing that from our members. Do you think that economy, that really will be the driver? That's going to be the decisive issue in the coming election, particularly, I think, against this backdrop of a robust economy in the prior administration?
I think the economy is going to be the number one issue this fall. I think, between inflation, between supply chain issues, between interest rates are about to start going up, which is going to impact how new home sales, resales of housing, all that sort of stuff. I mean, there are so many different factors weighing on the economy right now, and the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress seem to want to just keep spending more money, which is going to make inflation worse. They're not open yet to expanding, American production of oil and natural gas, even back to the levels that we were at a couple of years ago. I mean, we put an embargo on Russian oil, yesterday, of like 200,000 barrels a day, I believe. We were producing 1 million barrels more than we're producing now just a couple of years ago. So we have the ability to produce that within the country. So I think the economy, energy independence, national security, those are things that are quickly rising to the top, if not already at the top for most Americans. And Democrats and President Biden aren't doing much to address those issues right now.
And so many of these big issues really are tied to one another. And for example, if you take the open borders and the defund the police on one hand, you see rising homelessness, you see record homicides, drug overdoses, and surging illegal migration. There are so many ways that these things are tied together. I want to ask you, do you see federal overspending, Biden's federal overspending, killing the energy independence, accelerating inflation for average Americans? Are they linked, the shutting down of America's energy independence and accelerating inflation? And how could you make that case that they are linked?
Well, I think anytime that you take an American industry, you dial it back or restrict it from making money, and then go and spend that money overseas, you're literally exporting American dollars across the world, right? Instead of spending it at home. So these are American companies, some of them small. Like, everyone thinks about oil and natural gas as Shell and BP and Exxon. There's a lot of smaller individuals who drill for oil and do all those things, and they're impacted by this as well. So I think energy independence, it matters at home. It keeps our money at home. It keeps it from going to people like Vladimir Putin. And we should all be in favor of expanding American energy. As I think the economy is moving toward potentially more renewable energy and that sort of thing, and that's good, and we should do that. But there's no reason not to use the resources that we have here to bridge that as we move toward more green energy and that sort of thing.
And I think that that is really a main reason why we're seeing gasoline increase at the pump anyway. I pray that people recognize that while in part, when we say we refuse oil from Russia, that certainly is going to impact things. But it's only one piece of the puzzle. There's so many tools at the Biden administration's disposal, I think, to really reverse things here. And we pray here at Amac that they do, that they recognize that. But we're going to hold them accountable and try to get the truth out so that people can understand what's at stake, really, and who their candidates stand for, what they stand for. So I want to shift for a moment to some family-oriented issues. I think that you're a father of 4 boys. Is that right?
That's right. I've got 4 boys.
Oh, that's beautiful. So you really understand some of these issues, I think, that are personal issues. I'm wondering if you could give us a bird's eye view on what you think the current research might suggest and how people feel about the issue of abortion. AMAC's 2.4 million AMAC members are fully in support of life from conception to natural death. How do you see the relevance and potential public reaction to the issue of abortion, since we could see a reversal of Roe v. Wade? Do you think that issue or other social issues, such as the suppression of religious liberties, the transgender sports issue, will these social issues play a major role in 2022? What does the data seem to suggest?
Look, I think that as far as polling on abortion is concerned, it's always very tricky to poll abortion because you know, people on the on the pro-life side will say that a certain percent of the country is pro-life or opposes abortion at certain generally or with certain restrictions. But people on the the pro-abortion side, they would prefer to say, well, this number of people are against banning abortion, and so we shouldn't ban abortion. So I think the polling is always very muddled on it. The reality, I think, is that most Americans believe that abortion should be banned after the first trimester. I think that's a pretty, it's not even a American mainstream thing. It's a global mainstream thing. Most countries in the world do not allow abortion after the first trimester. That should not be particularly controversial, but for some reason it is. My wife is on the board of our local crisis pregnancy center. I'm, pro-life from, conception to natural death. And so I think that it's an important issue for me and for my family. I think it's important for a lot of voters. I think that for some people, it is the thing that motivates them to vote, no matter what. And I think that's fantastic. I think for a lot of Americans this time, the economy, jobs, national security, border security are probably the things that are going to move them to vote Republican this time, whereas before they may not have. But I think that, the pro-life coalition is the core of the Republican Party's support and should continue to be.
Yeah. It's really quite interesting that you say that more people across the globe are recognizing that the science is pointing towards viable life in the womb at younger and younger, points of gestation. That we recognize that there's something wrong when we see nothing wrong with taking the life of a 8-month-old baby and growing in the womb. So I think that we've, again, here at AMAC. We just try to address the issues that are most important to our AMAC members, and this is an issue that they really want us to speak out on and fight for. So I do, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens, what comes out of the Supreme Court, and how states respond to that. So we'll have to wait and see there. Go ahead.
To that point, I think if we see if the court somehow overturns Roe or overturns or changes the way abortion is regulated in the United States, what you're going to see is a shift in the states themselves. If the states gain the rights of to be able to restrict or expand abortion access or not, those policies are going to be driven in the states, and that's why it's going to be so important to elect pro-life governors, pro-life state legislators, and courts that will respect the decisions that the legislatures, the policies that they enact. What you see right now across the country, there are a lot of state Supreme Courts that are activists, that are ultra liberal compared to their states. And I think conservatives and Republicans have to get more and more engaged in making sure that the judges that preside over their state courts respect their state constitutions, respect the rule of law, don't try to legislate from the bench. And if we see big pro-life wins this term at the Supreme Court, the makeup of those courts is going to become that much more important. Just look at Kansas. Kansas is a very red state. It's a conservative state. But a couple years ago, Kansas's Supreme Court is so liberal that it found a right to abortion in the Kansas Constitution. Like, that's how liberal the Kansas Supreme Court is. Other Supreme Courts in pretty conservative states are like that to various extents as well. So I think conservatives and Republicans have got to get focused on these and make sure that we've got judges that respect the rule of law and will not legislate from the bench.
Yeah, very good point. Excellent point. Thank you, Adam. And your life experiences have really given you an awareness, I think, over the years of these links between our domestic issues here at home and international issues. And we were just speaking how so many of them are tied together. We see the recent Russian invasion of Ukraine and the impact on energy, our global security, countless economies, and how we really think about the future really drives that point home. Asking you more on data points because we do find it so interesting. Do you see any data that suggests that Americans are focusing anew on international issues, on China, on Iran, on Russia, and how these events in Europe are going to affect us here. In other words, like, are Americans becoming more focused on the impact of things over there, worried about how they might affect us here? And could that impact us in 2022 and 2024 with what's unfolding in Ukraine?
Well, I think that it's obvious that Americans are more focused on what's going on around the world right now, especially given what we have seen in the Ukraine over the last few weeks, but given the disastrous withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan and what resulted there. I think people are realizing, at least I'd like to think that people on our side of the aisle are realizing that when America pulls back globally, the bad guys win. And the things that happened in the Ukraine or other places, they impact the United States. And we have a much smaller world. It's a more interconnected world. Our economies are interconnected and everything else. And so when freedom and the forces of freedom retreat, we see that the forces of totalitarianism advance, like we've seen in Afghanistan and now in Ukraine. So I think there's a balance that can be struck between various being on offense versus having American forces in places to protect democracies. And so I think that's I know that's been a debate within the GOP the last few years. I tend to fall in the Reagan wing of the party when it comes to foreign policy, but I think we need to secure our borders at home, and we need to make sure that we're defending our allies abroad. And I think we can do both of those things.
Amen. We've got to defend our own borders here at home. That's for sure. I have one last question for you, Adam. Do you see the Biden administration, specifically Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, do you see that their popularity is shrinking even more so? I mean, I know that they're terrible in the polls. Do you think that people, again, I think that war can disrupt things often, and what we're seeing happen over there can often skew the perspective that people might have of the job that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are doing, or the role that they're playing. What do you see, and how are people viewing their performance?
Well, Joe Biden ran on a platform of returning to competence, whatever that meant. And so for the first several months of his administration, he had a positive approval rating. And then Afghanistan happened. And everyone wants to say it's not about Afghanistan, but I think when Afghanistan happened, people realized that we have a president who doesn't really have command over the issues the way he pretended he did. COVID continued on for several more months, even though he said he was going to, defeat COVID and everything else. And, it's only been, I think, a few months now, but his approval rating is sitting at 42% on the Real Clear Politics average. Do you know what the generic ballot is for Democrats on the same average? 42%. Voters have gotten to a point where they realize that Joe Biden's not doing a very good job. Most Americans disapprove. It's not even like in the 40s. It's over 52% now of Americans disapprove of the job that he's doing. And, they're open to voting for Republicans. So I think it's very clear that as inflation continues to be a problem, as the economy continues to sputter, as, President Biden fails to, defend our borders, those numbers aren't going to get any better for him.
Thank you, Adam. I actually do have one more question. I guess I should have really started with this question because I think that this is really fundamental, the integrity of our election systems and the importance of every legal vote counting. And so we know that the rights that states have under the 10th Amendment and redistricting exists. And so I was remiss. I probably should have started here, since all roads really lead to this, and much of what happens ahead in America is going to be based on redistricting, electoral integrity, and really assuring that our constitutional rights are assured. So please tell us, if you would, about your current focus, in particular the activities and mission of the National Republican Redistricting Trust.
It's a mouthful. We call it.
Yeah, it is.
Just a lot easier.
Been tongue-tied all morning, it seems.
The National Republican Redistricting Trust exists to make sure that Republicans across the country have access to the tools they need to either draw their maps, state legislative and congressional maps, to fight back against Democrats who have the ability to draw the maps in some states, or engage successfully with redistricting commissions. Our number one job is to make sure Republicans have the tools they need to do their jobs in redistricting. So redistricting is a very wonky, in the weeds sort of process issue, and I love it. But a lot of people, yeah, it's not for everybody, but it's my passion. So as far as how districts are drawn, the Constitution gives the right to draw maps to state legislatures. They have to balance districts every 10 years after the census to make sure that no district is too big or too small, because we don't want that are, say, 2 million people and another one that's 1 million people, because that would be out of balance. And then those 1 million people are getting a lot more of a bang for their vote than those other 2 million. So we do that every decade. A lot of times it happens in the middle of the decade. There's a lot of lawsuits that go around. Democrats sue in Republican states where they don't like the lines. Republicans sue in Democrat states. But the trust is brand new. We started it in 2017. It's a new piece of the GOP arsenal to engage in the states and make sure that our folks have what they need to do their jobs. So I think over the next few years, what you're going to see is that litigation and everything else will continue. New maps will be drawn. But what we've done this cycle is we've made sure that where Republicans had the pin, we had the ability to shore up vulnerable incumbents, go on offense, flip seats where possible to create new offensive opportunities, but also make sure that Republicans in these states that don't have control were able to fight back and hold Democrats accountable, which is as important, if not more so. So I'll give you one example. There's about 10 states in the country that use commissions to draw their maps. These are usually made up of citizens who don't really know much about redistricting, but they're tasked with drawing the maps for their states. It's a process that gives Democrats an advantage, because there's a lot of folks that align with the left that are technically nonpartisan. So they look like they're good government groups that are getting in there and engaging with these commissions. Going into the process, we had, to just give you a sense of how blue these states generally are that have these, there were 76 seats in these states that Joe Biden carried by 10% or more. There were only 21 Republican seats that Donald Trump carried by 10% or more. So that's how blue these districts were in these states. Coming out of redistricting, there are still only 76 seats that Joe Biden carried by 10%. There's one more Republican seat. We went from 21 to 22, and there are 26 competitive seats still before and after redistricting. This was a massive win for the GOP. Our worst performing area 10 years ago on redistricting were redistricting commissions. We fought Democrats to a draw there this time, which is a huge step forward from where we were 10 years ago. The biggest difference between where we were in 2011 versus now, Republicans had less control over redistricting because of the 2018 midterms and the results of that. So what we were able to do is make sure that we locked in our gains, protected our incumbents, went on offense. And then in a lot of these states that were split, where neither party had control, there were more of those this time in bigger states. And we made sure that we went, and fought Democrats in court and in the legislatures and everywhere else to make sure that we had a seat at that table. So I think overall for this cycle, we're just about exactly where we thought we would be at this point. And I think over the next few years, you're going to see that we're going to continue to take the fight to the Democrats.
This is just fascinating. It really is quite interesting and so important, really. And we appreciate that we've got people like you that are paying attention and helping to ensure that there are protections in place so that there's a fairness, because it's got to be done right. And this is really our future. Republic, I think, counts on the electoral process being free and fair. And all of these components, I think that so many of us, we don't think about, can play a key role in the outcome. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks to all
Yeah,
of
it
your
was
members.
Oh, it was really awesome because we love your insights. This is super informative, and you're definitely helping to turn the dial and make things happen for the heartland of America, and really helping to restore some of the key values that really built this nation and are keeping us strong today. So thank you so much, and I hope to have you back in 2022 later in the year.
Be glad to do it. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody listening out here today. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't downloaded the Amac News app, go ahead and do that because you can watch, you can listen, and you can track this show right from your smartphone. Thank you so much for joining. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, like, follow, and share wherever you are on social media. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thanks for being here. God bless you. Have a great day, everyone.
You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens. To learn more about Amac and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.